The galactic community had long feared humanity's potential for destruction, but no one had dared to test it until they made a fatal miscalculation. Their fleet, vast and powerful, saw Earth's moon as nothing more than a strategic liability, an object that could be removed to weaken humanity's orbital infrastructure. And so, without warning, they did the unthinkable. The fleet unleashed a barrage of antimatter warheads upon Luna, shattering it into billions of fragments, sending debris raining down upon Earth. Tides surged, cities flooded, and the planet trembled with aftershocks. The devastation was immediate and undeniable. Coastal cities disappeared under monstrous tsunamis. Lunar colonies were obliterated in an instant, their inhabitants reduced to nothing more than scattered atoms in the vacuum of space. The world stood still in horror, watching as fire rained from the sky, as the heavens themselves seemed to turn against them. But the galaxy did not understand what they had done. Not yet. The arrogant in their supposed superiority believed they had dealt humanity a crippling blow. Their war councils congratulated themselves, certain that the loss of the moon would send Earth spiraling into chaos, breaking its fragile alliances and rendering its military capabilities useless. They did not understand the weight of their actions. They did not understand that they had not weakened humanity, they had united them. For the first time in recorded history, every human nation, every faction, every ideology put aside their differences. National boundaries became meaningless. Ancient rivalries were discarded as irrelevant. What had once been fractured now stood as one. Humanity did not fall into despair. They did not weep for their loss. They burned with fury. In an instant, the collective purpose of an entire species was rewritten. The only goal now was vengeance. A message was transmitted across all frequencies. It was short, clear, and absolute. We are coming. There were no demands, no negotiations, no pleas for justice. Only a promise of retribution. The world shifted into motion with terrifying speed. Shipyards across the Solar System, from the West orbital facilities around Mars to the mining stations in the asteroid belt, went into full production. Factories that once manufactured civilian goods were overnight. Everything was now dedicated to one thing: war. Weapons research accelerated beyond reason. The usual limitations of ethics and regulations were cast aside. Humanity was no longer concerned with the balance of power in the galaxy. They were not building a fleet for war. They were building an executioner. Prototypes that had once been dismissed as too dangerous or too unstable were rushed into testing. Targeting systems, gravitational weaponry, hypervelocity, and terrifying warfare solutions, all of it was put into production with a singular focus. They would not just be defeated. They would be eradicated. The galactic community watched in unease. Many had feared that humanity could become a problem if provoked, but none had expected this level of escalation. The sheer scale of their mobilization defied every precedent. Where other species took decades to prepare for war, humanity adapted in weeks. Where diplomacy and negotiation were often used to stall conflicts, humanity ignored all attempts at contact. There was no conversation to be had, no compromises to be made. The moon had been taken. Now the would-be, the oblivious to the depth of the mistake they had made, continued to mark their so-called victory. Their fleets paraded through their home systems, their propaganda machines celebrating the supposed crippling of humanity. They failed to see the storm gathering on the edge of their sensors. They failed to recognize the sudden silence from Earth's embassies, the way every station went dark, every trading vessel vanished. The humans were not broken. They were preparing. And then the first strike came. They were used to controlling the battlefield, dictating the peace of war. But they had never faced an enemy like this. In a single night, entire outposts vanished. Their patrol fleets found themselves hunted. Their strongest defenses bypassed as if they did not exist. Humanity did not fight as expected. They did not fight for territory or strategy. They fought with the rage of an extinction event, an unstoppable wave of destruction that did not seek to conquer, only to punish. The war had begun, and the galaxy would soon learn the true meaning of human wrath. For the first time in recorded history, every human nation, every faction, every ideology united under one banner, the banner of vengeance. The loss of the moon was more than an attack, it was a scar carved into the soul of an entire species. The expected grief, maybe diplomatic outcry, but they failed to understand the nature of what they got instead was madness. Every shipyard from Mars to Titan began working at full capacity. Weapons research accelerated at an unnatural pace. The message was clear: humanity would not stop at retaliation. They would break the beyond repair. The madness began in the factories and shipyards, but it did not stay there. On Earth, in Mars colonies, in every Terran outpost across the system, a shift occurred. There were no more debates, no hesitation. Every resource, every ounce of knowledge, every breath was focused on one thing: the eradication of the humanity had known war before. It had waged brutal conflicts, engaged in bitter struggles, but this was different. This was personal. Engineers abandoned sleep in favor of designing ships built for maximum destruction. Generals tore apart old strategies and rewrote them with a purpose: annihilation. In the span of mere months, the Terran fleet was no longer just a collection of military vessels. It had become a force of reckoning. Ships that had once served as peaceful diplomatic envoys were retrofitted with weaponry that defied conventional warfare. Experimental weapons that had been locked away for ethical reasons were suddenly, without question. The artificial intelligences that governed fleet coordination were no longer bound by old constraints. Every system, every strategy, every innovation was now focused on one thing: making the regret their existence. Meanwhile, the galactic community looked on in horror. They had always known that humanity was different, that they were dangerous when provoked, but this was beyond anything they had ever seen. Empires that had once dismissed humanity as an upstart species suddenly found themselves re-evaluating their own defenses. Even the most civilizations in the galaxy found themselves whispering the same question: what have they done? They, in their arrogance, believed themselves safe. Their fleet, built over centuries, was among the most powerful in the galaxy. Their technology was advanced, their defenses seemingly impenetrable. They did not fear retaliation, because they could not conceive of an enemy capable of surpassing them. That belief shattered when the first human ships arrived. The initial assault was not a battle. It was an execution. Human ships tore through defenses with terrifying efficiency. The weapons humanity deployed were unlike anything seen before: energy lances that burned through shields as if they were paper, kinetic, that sent shockwaves rippling through entire armadas, drones that adapted to counter enemy tactics. The proud fleets, which had once ruled the stars with confidence, found themselves obliterated before they could even react. The madness spread. It was not just the fleet, humanity itself had changed. Psychological warfare became a terrifying new frontier. Entire planets woke up to broadcasts from relays: we are coming. There is nowhere to hide. Their communication systems were infiltrated. Messages filled with the voices of their own dying commandants screaming for help played on endless loops. Ghost ships, stripped of all life, drifted into space with messages scrawled on their hulls, warnings written in the blood of their former crews. The arrogance, their belief in their superiority, had doomed them. They had thought they were breaking humanity's spirit by destroying the moon, but all they had done was forge something far worse: unity in fury. The leaders, once so sure of their invincibility, now faced the horrifying reality: they had made a mistake that could not be undone. And the humans were only getting started. The first counter-strike was brutal. The human fleet, once seen as modest compared to the great empires of the galaxy, emerged from Sol with terrifying precision. Their ships, now heavily modified with experimental weaponry and reinforced with unorthodox strategies, tore through defenses as if they were made of paper. Aorbital bombardments left entire worlds scorched. War fleets were hunted down to the last vessel, and surrender was no longer an option. Humanity had gone beyond war. This was extermination. The military leaders scrambled to organize a defense, but every strategy they deployed was countered with ruthless efficiency. Their planetary shields, once believed to be impenetrable, were shattered in minutes. Terran fired projectiles that ripped through entire capital ships, splitting them apart as if they were made of glass. Their defensive fleets, outnumbering the humans 3-1, found themselves decimated in a matter of hours. Every engagement followed the same pattern. Human forces arrived, struck with overwhelming force, and left nothing behind but smoldering wreckage and drifting bodies. On the ground, it was even worse. Cities, once bustling with life, were reduced to rubble in surgical precision. Terran strike teams moved through occupied territories with frightening coordination, neutralizing military installations, command centers, and any form of organized resistance before they even had a chance to mount a response. It was clear that humanity was not fighting for conquest. They were not fighting for resources. They were fighting to erase the from existence. The galaxy watched in horror as reports of the human retaliation spread. Even the most hardened warlords of the universe, species who had waged campaigns of conquest for millennia, found themselves shaken by the sheer brutality of the human response. There was no diplomacy, no opportunity for surrender. The Terran fleet did not seek terms, they sought justice through annihilation. Once the jewel of their empire, was now under siege. Every escape route was cut off. Every defensive measure rendered useless. The humans had become the storm that they had foolishly unleashed. Desperation spread among the leadership. Messages were sent out in every direction, pleading for allies to intervene, to stop the human advance before their entire civilization was reduced to ashes. But no one came. The other galactic powers, once wary of humanity's rapid rise, had no desire to draw their wrath. They had seen what happened when you provoked the. They had witnessed the destruction firsthand. They had no intention of becoming the next target. They had made this war. Now they would suffer alone. What little remained of the fleet attempted to form a defensive line around their home system. It was a desperate, suicidal maneuver, when meant to buy time, to slow the inevitable. It failed. The human fleet shattered their final resistance like an unstoppable wave, pushing deeper into space with every passing hour. Terran warships darkened the skies of their guns primed, their intent clear. And then, the final blow was struck. Human forces deployed a bombardment so devastating that the very crust of the cracked, sending seismic shockwaves rippling across the planet. Entire continents split apart, swallowed by fire and darkness. Their capital, once a symbol of strength and prosperity, was reduced to nothing more than radioactive dust. The screams of the dying filled the calms, but there was no one left to hear them. Humanity had done what no other species had dared to do. They had erased a civilization from existence. As the fires raged and the last echoes of the empire faded, the Terran fleet sent out a single transmission, broadcasted to every corner of the galaxy. It contained no threats, no demands, only a warning. It was a lesson written in the ruins of a fallen species. You do not take from humanity and live. The galaxy had feared humanity's potential for destruction. Now they understood the truth. They were gone, and humanity had proven one undeniable fact. When go to war, they do not stop until their enemies cease to exist. By the time the High Council realized their mistake, it was too late. The species that had once been feared for their potential had proven every nightmare true. No diplomatic plea, no surrender transmission, no offer of reparations could halt the onslaught. The once a shining beacon of power was left as a graveyard of ash and ruin. The surviving empires of the galaxy took note. You do not take from, not without suffering the consequences. The moon was gone, but the lesson remained. Humanity does not forgive, and it never forgets. The aftermath of the war was a cautionary tale unlike any the galaxy had ever witnessed. The destruction of the civilization was not just a military conquest, it was a demonstration. Where once their empire stood, now there was silence. Their fleets were no more, their colonies reduced to drifting wreckage, there a smoldering ruin. The humans had made no attempt to colonize the devastated territories, nor had they looted the resources that once fueled the war machine. There was no interest in gain, only in punishment. The few who survived were scattered refugees, and wanted and unwelcome, forever cursed by the choices of their ancestors. The remaining galactic powers debated how to react. Some saw an opportunity to step into the power vacuum left behind, but none dared make a move. The sheer efficiency of humanity's retaliation had changed the balance of power overnight. Fear gripped the council chambers of every major empire, and when unspoken rule was etched into their hearts, Earth was not to be provoked. Diplomats scrambled to send envoys, each eager to ensure their own survival should they ever cross paths with humanity's fury. Treaties were hastily signed, agreements forged, and suddenly, humanity was no longer a young, upstart species. They were now the quiet, lurking power that no one wanted to challenge. The Terran Republic, however, made no grand statements, no overt displays of dominance. They did not demand concessions from the galactic community. They did not seek to expand their influence. They simply returned home, their war machine going dormant once more. Their silence was deafening. The galaxy watched, waiting for another declaration, another retaliation, but none came. This was not conquest. This was justice as humanity saw it. The moon had been taken, and had paid the price. That was enough. Yet even in their return to peace, humanity had changed. The loss of the moon had scarred them, and that wound would never fully heal. The new space stations orbiting Earth were reinforced beyond reason, weapons bristling from every angle. The shipyards around Mars remained operational, building vessels with no stated purpose but capable of waging war on a scale the galaxy had never seen before. A new phrase began circulating through the outer worlds, whispered in shadowed corners. Humanity is sleeping, but never unarmed. The few refugees that remained scattered across the galaxy bore the weight of their people's sins. They were outcasts, seen as living warnings of what happened when you provoked the wrong species. Their presence was tolerated at best, feared at worst. The memories of what they had lost haunted them, their world, their culture, their very identity, all reduced to echoes in the stars. A child born after the war would never set foot on their ancestors had once ruled. They were a people without a future, all because their leaders had made a single fatal mistake. For the Terran Republic, life continued. Trade resumed, colonies expanded, and scientific progress marched on. But beneath the surface, there was a fundamental shift. Humanity no longer sought recognition in the galactic community. They did not need validation or approval. They had proven themselves in the most undeniable way possible. No longer were they the hopeful explorers eager to prove their worth. Now they were something else entirely, something ancient empires and species dared not name aloud. The war became legend, passed down in hushed tones by those who had witnessed it firsthand. The destruction of was not just a lesson in military might but a warning written in fire and blood. And though the stars continued to burn bright, there was now a shadow that lingered in the void, a silent truth that every species carried in their collective consciousness. You do not take from humanity. You do not break them. You do not touch what is theirs. Because if you do, they will erase you.